welcome to the Automation Launchpad. I am Mike Johnson. I am the NOC manager for Vision Computer Solutions in Northville, Michigan. The reason that I am here today is because I wanted this session for me, and so I figured if I want to have it, I better teach it, and then that way I can make it available for everyone. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense right off the cuff, but for some of the people who wandered in at the beginning, I kind of went over what the idea is here. I want a solution for everyone in the room, so that way we can come in, and when I sat down at lunch over the last 2 years, and I heard other partners saying, I don't have time to automate that thing. You know, whatever it was, whether it was big, small, in between, it doesn't matter. I just didn't have time to automate that thing. And so when I probe a little further, I find out, well, I just didn't know where to start. Like once you get the ball rolling, you have that momentum, but trying to get the ball rolling in the first place is the most difficult piece of that. So the whole idea behind this was, when we did the Automation 101 class, that's Matt's baby right there, then the 201, I would present these things and people would say, I want to know more about how you did that. So I thought, well, why don't we start out the class with, I'll present some of those automation things that we have brought up in those classes, how Vision Computer Solutions solve for the problems that we had as a result of those. And then from there we can kind of extend that into an open forum situation where you can ask questions, and then I'm more than happy to have other people in this crowd answer, because just because I'm standing up here doesn't make me the most qualified person to answer. I use this product, I love this product, I would say I'm fairly good with the product, or otherwise they wouldn't allow me to be up here, but I'm definitely not the best, and there are aspects of all of the product that somebody will always be better than you in. Accept that, be happy about it, and just glean from your peers when you're here. It's the best thing that can happen while you're at this event. So, Matt, if you would please introduce yourself, and
Sure.
we will continue from there.
I really like the humility in that. Isn't that nice? Yeah. It's awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Miller. Yes, I am with ConnectWise, a.k.a. Automate, a.k.a. Lab Tech. I have been with ConnectWise for about almost 7 years, since 2010, late 2010. So I started with the company as a consultant. So I was the individual that jumped on an airplane, came to your house, and installed, at the time, Lab Tech for you, and helped you transition maybe if you were moving from a previous RMM. So over the course of several years, I've learned a lot about the product. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had trial and error through the product. I've seen the good parts and the bad parts. When I first started on the consulting team, one of my first jobs was to install Lab Tech manually. Yes, I came in the door working for an automation company that was manually installing their product. My first response is, man, this is stupid. So what did I do? I wrote a batch file. I didn't even use Lab Tech, as it was named at the time, to be able to do a lot of these automated tasks until I started learning the product. I started looking at this product and see the power of what it can do. And right now, just for installations alone, if you go, and I had mentioned earlier before the meeting started, if you go through an on-premise installation through our consulting team, we are using Automate to install your Automate server. It takes approximately 4 hours for someone to it's a complex product to install. Has anyone tried it? Yeah, it's pretty fun, right? So we've automated the entire procedure, and we're saving up to 4 man hours per installation, and we can do up to 90 a month. So therefore, we're not only saving time, but also the human error factor. We're removing that. We can use Automate to be able to validate all the installation points are correct, so it's consistent every single time out of the box. It took about 6,000 lines of code to be able to install this product, by way of using Automate scripting as well as PowerShell integrated into those scripts. So that's kind of a little piece of the types of things that I do day to day, amongst as well as who's a cloud partner here? Anyone cloud partners? Okay, we've got a small handful of cloud partners. So we do all the monitoring, management, patching, upgrading, all of this on your cloud instances if you're a SaaS partner, by using Automate. So we eat our own dog food. Just like a lot of you, we use Manage to be able to manage our tickets and provide support. So I'm in the same boat as everyone here. I'm essentially their Lab Tech admin. So that's what I do day to day, just like you do.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Matt. So I want to start out with a couple things. First of all, what are we doing in here? So the idea behind this is we want to set up all of you for success. Whether you know exactly what you're doing or you have no idea where you're starting at, we can share the ideas. We can start out that successful journey just by getting into here. I want to deep dive the automation. I want to look at some of the things that we've done. I want to see your challenges, and I want to see if, as a group, we can come up with some of the solutions to starting those things out for you. That's where the Launchpad comes in. And then that's where the open discussion will come in. We're going to open it up at the end, and I don't want anyone in here to feel like you can't say, hey, I actually solved for that problem already. We did this, this, and this. Now, granted, with the number of people in here, we're going to have to keep that kind of at the Launchpad start point. we did these things, we created these EDFs, we created these searches, we created these groups, we did this. You're not going to be able to really go too deep into that piece, and it might be that after everyone leaves, some groups form in the hallway and people just start hammering out some ideas. I don't know, but we'll need to be respectful so that we can get as much of this going as we can. So we'll just kind of moderate that as we go. So just work with us on that. Now, one of the things, so going through this, I wanted to kind of come up with some of the best practices and some of the ideas that we could, in order to make automation better to start with. So these are kind of the launching points, and if you've gone to the 101, the 201, Matt does cover these to some extent when we're going into the considerations for what you should actually bake into your automation. So first of all, your automation is never complete. If you view it as you made it, it's done, you're not going to modify it, good luck with that, because they might come up with a patch release, Windows updates all the time. Those are the things that get in your way of, okay, I set it and forget it. You will modify it. The problem with that is you're going to see that again, so it would help you in advance to actually plan for what it is you're going to have to do later down the road as well. Which means you're also your own best friend or your worst enemy. You can either just rush it into production and potentially break things, or you can set it up now so that way, first of all, it's tested. Testing, we talked about that as well. But also that you can go back and you know where to go to find it. Hey, what search did I tie to that particular group to pull off that automation without having to actually pull up, here's the agent, here's my applied policy, here's all the things, go back to that group. You can do that. I've had to do it. But it's not time saving later. So if you're writing it down now and you log that for another time, you'll be able to get back to that search very quickly. So you can just change that value, change your automation, and apply it to what you're doing now. And then lastly, the better your notes are, the less you'll have to explain. How many people in here have trouble trying to communicate to your technicians what exactly it was that you automated? Or for that matter, getting your technicians to actually run a script? Anybody? Okay, only 4. Where were you guys at lunch when we were talking about that? No, that's the thing. Like trying to get people to get invested in this and trying to get them to want to is already difficult enough, but mystifying the process by either crappy names on your actual script itself or how everything ties together is so convoluted that nobody can understand it, you're going to wind up hurting yourself in the long run and just wish that you had done it better from the beginning. So, quickly, I want to go through the best practice stuff just to make sure that we're all on the same page, then we'll deep dive into the automation. So stick with me for a minute here. First of all, check your scope. This is something we didn't necessarily talk about so much in the automation class, but try to figure out at what level you're going to actually have to apply this. Because by default, you're thinking, oh man, okay, I'm going to try to do this for the customer, so I should do this at the client level. But then there's always that technician that says, hey, it's really nice that we have that going for the customer, but it's breaking all of the ones at this location. Can we exclude that location? Well, maybe I should have actually set that at a location level instead of a client level. Or maybe I am only doing this for those few times that we need it, but the process to do it is so intensive that I should just do it on the computer level and I'll do it one at a time, but it's going to take me 6 hours to do it, or I can just click the thing and make it do it on its own. So the time invested is actually worth it, even though I might only add 5 machines to it. You have to kind of judge that and sort of try to think of that ahead of time and view where that might go. Also, do you need an override? So I can add them to it. At what point do I override or not override? Who has permissions to actually do so? Do I need to take OS into consideration? Anybody ever try to remove AVG? You love how that sucker comes off of there? Because it doesn't? The removal tool actually does get rid of it. The problem is there's one for 32 and one for 64. If you want to actually just automate that removal, you got to take the OS into account, and you can bake that right into the script. So the 32-bit will download the 32-bit client, will run the 32-bit client, and will complete itself with the 32-bit client. 64 the same way. And you can use the same script to run against any machine just based on its OS type. And then also think about, like, will companies need an individual code for theirs? Somebody in the other class that I think was going to be in here asked me, like, can I make an EDF that just stores a key value for Adobe or some other software that puts in there? Yeah, you can totally do that. That way you just keep using that same key and the script calls that key from the EDF, dumps it in for you, done. That way I can just run a script or even just set it up for automation for myself. Write out a description. This right here, I did the automated agent removal. So after 30 days of being offline, and I might have actually screenshotted that before we changed it. Yep. After 30 days of a machine not checking in, I just have my lab tech server cleared out. We don't really want them just sitting in there. There's a lot of lost time just trying to figure out whether or not it was actually offline or not, just due to service desk issues. So as a result, we just have it removed. So I have that script going.
So what you're saying is to actually document something?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And if you'll notice, this
Document.
is IT glue. Oh, sorry, a little shameless plug for them. Am I allowed to do that? I don't know. Anyway. Vision Computer Solutions in Northville, Michigan chooses to use it, but you don't have to necessarily. No, but that's the thing. If you can write it down so that way you can come back to it later and you actually have an idea of what it does, that will also give you something to say, go read the documentation on how that thing works. So if you write it out in plain text, you can tell your technician, go there, don't be dumb. Go see what I wrote already, so I don't have to verbally tell you. You can flowchart it. I got really sick and tired of having the automated, the little pop-up nag that would come in when the patches had been done. And they would get ignored because the problem is they were popping off when it finished at 6 o'clock in the morning before a user actually saw it. And so I wanted one right at lunchtime. And instead of rebaking out the entire system on the patch management side, because some people did see it at 6 a.m., I just decided I'm going to add in my extra one. So I did that. But I also made sure, and you'll notice up at the top, I put the searches used in there. So that way I can go back and I know exactly which searches I had involved in that. And those are the search IDs. If you ever look at the SQL numbers associated, you can just turn those on. There's a feature for that. So if you aren't looking at the numbers for everything, I can help you figure that part out. The groups are used, the scripts that are actually called in that whole process, and then the whole workflow on from start to finish, how that's going to trigger, what it's going to do to the customer, and then that way, this doesn't reboot anything, don't worry, it just tells them to. And actually putting that in at 11 o'clock right before they go to lunch, and it says in there, you need to reboot when it's convenient. Please consider doing this when you go to lunch. And surprisingly, my numbers went from like 130 workstations that needed a reboot to 40 in the same day. Like, oh, people actually do read sometimes. It's those other 40 that just want to call in a week later and go, why does it keep popping up every day? Can you make that stop? Yeah, you can just reboot. It's amazing it actually said that. And anyway, finally, some extra considerations for you here. Make a test scripts folder. Mine is exactly called Z test scripts. Do not run anything in this folder. Z, so that way it's at the bottom of the list. Anyone who went through the 101 knows that's my thinking on things. I put a Z in front of it so that way it always alphabetically ends up at the end. And then do not run anything in this folder in all caps, so there is no way that a technician can look at that folder and go, I should probably try something that's in here. Because there are those times when I've actually intentionally left them available, so that way if a technician says, hey, I got to do this 40 times over, and I know it's going to be just a quick burnout script because I already have a template that's ready to go to make that happen, I can do that in 20 seconds. It's going to save them 4 hours. Yeah, that's a worthwhile thing. All I got to do is plug in a value. But I'm going to leave it in that folder anyway and just tell them, go in there and run this because I've tested against that one agent in my test environment. Can't promise you anything past that. So if you choose to run this, it's on you, but I'm not necessarily putting this into production until I've done a much better test. Make a Windows VM host, make a test VM host with all the flavor of Windows ISOs available. So that's one of the other things that I did. I've got all the server flavors, all the regular workstation flavors, and I just spin them up whenever I need them. That way I can run a script against them.
With your first bullet there, I would also suggest making sure the test scripts, the permissions, are set so nobody can even see them other than your admins, because the issue is with the begin button now with the search capabilities, they won't see what folder it comes from. So that has caused us some issues in the past.
That's actually a very good point that I had not taken into consideration in this. With Automate 11, they have removed or changed the ability so now you can run it directly from the machine without looking at the folder structure. So you could potentially type in reboot and find one that was actually in the test environment that could bork something. So yeah, definitely consider locking down with permissions and then just unlocking if somebody was actually requesting it. It's probably a better way to do it. And yeah, great, now I get to go home tonight or to the hotel room and start locking crap down. So there's another recommendation. Putting beta or also test or anything else that the lineages don't run this. DRT.
Yeah,
don't run this.
I know for a lot of things that we do, we signify like a delimiter. We use tildes or underscores. Underscores, for example, if a script is named with an underscore, we know that it's a subscript. It's not designed to be run natively or directly from that script. It's designed to be called from another script. So we can just look at it and we know, and via permissions, and if you go into a script, you can see where it's a computer script, a function script, an offline script. We set it to where it's not available in the computer menu because it's not made to be run independently.
This is going to sound really stupid and very inefficient, but the problem is communicating to new technicians and even reminding the ones who already exist that don't use them very often what the subscript character is. I actually just, in parentheses after the script, put in run this one or run the other one. So that way they know, like, don't run this or run that one. It's cheap, it's cheesy, but then they come back to me, they're like, I ran this and it didn't work. Really? It says it in the name, run the other one. So why didn't you run the other one? I try to make it as user-friendly as I can. All right, so don't forget that you can turn a command or set of commands into a script right from the commands screen. So if you're in your commands tile now, or if you're still not on 11 in the screen, you can just select a series of commands and turn that into your script. A lot of times that was I got to get this done, that was my quick and simple one. I just ran all the ones I needed against a test VM so that way I can't break anything. So I wanted to do this, reboot, and then do this afterward. Run those commands, and then just copy that, paste it into a script, or just make a script, and then rename that to what I need, test it again against that VM. Okay, it's doing the same thing it was before, production. So that's another option for how you can do it. If you need to modify any system scripts, caveat, you should never modify any system scripts because ConnectWise Automate reserves the right at any point in time to overwrite your changes with any updates within the Solution Center.
Wow, that was...
That was really good for a non-ConnectWise member, right?
Well said.
So there are those times, onboarding was one for us, that I wanted to be able to add in some additional scripts that ran during the onboarding process. I cheated. I made Z copy folder, or Z scripts copy or something like that. And basically what it was, there are 3 scripts that I had to modify in the system. I copied those into there with the changes I made. Now I run my Ignite updates, it reverts them back. I open up the 2 that are the same, I copy the values back in, copy the values back in, copy the values back in, save them all, walk away, and it's back to where it was. I would not suggest changing the values on a significant number of system scripts. You will hate your life every time that you need to run something. It is much better to just, if you need to, there's an actual need for doing it, keep a copy of it so that way you can revert it back. And then also make sure that you read the new version of it because they may have actually changed a variable that is specific to the new product. So be careful if you ever do it. It is not suggested, it is not supported. So keep that in mind. Use the script and extra data field permissions to protect against the busy day brain. Somebody else kind of said that. Your technicians are going to run things that they shouldn't because they got in the middle of 3 projects at the same time and now they are completely zombified in their brain. Protect yourself against those by locking down the most important ones. You'll see the automated offboarding. That's a system admin only thing because I don't want somebody accidentally going, hey, this is a good button to click because they've been knee deep in a server all day and they end up offboarding a client for me. And Matt will say this one. I don't know that he adheres to it himself, but he'll at least tell you to do it. Use indents and script logs in your scripts to give you active feedback and help organize the view. That way you can tell what it's doing at the time. So many times I've actually put these into there and my technicians go, what is the script doing? Just hit refresh and read the screen.
Yeah. Yes, we do try to comply to that. The only difference is I may develop or write my scripts different than you and you and you. So as people start coming, people change positions in a company all day, every day. So as people come into the department that I'm on or out of the department, we share with them, we call it the 10 commandments of scripting. And we all try to conform to the same indent style, the same naming scheme or methodology. Everyone has their different flavor, and we have our own. And I know that in the Automation 201 lab, I'll be sharing those 10 commandments. But it's just helpful tips, but they're flexible, meaning if you have a better idea, we can change that as long as we all as a group adhere to those, or as a team. So the 8 or 9 engineers that I work with, we all try our best to adhere to it. Perfect example, another great thing is, when you create a script, you've got the little notes section there, give a description. It takes less than a minute to put a description. So the next engineer that goes in and modifies a script at least has an idea of what this script does, or if they need to maintain it. Put some permission information, something important about it. The next thing is, of course, permissions if it's applicable to you. So there's a lot of little things that, as you start learning the scripting methodology, in this case of automation, That's where not only do you develop your own method of organization, but share that amongst your team. If there's more than one of you, share it so you're not, have you ever looked at someone else's code? Whew, man, sometimes it can be rough, right? But if you all are developing the same general method, at least okay, everyone uses the same go-to label style. Everyone uses the same type of indentations. We disable lines the same way. We don't use go-to line numbers. There's 100 different ways that we can talk about how we can be organized. You just have to be organized in the same fashion.
Yeah, so enough of the basic training for you guys. Some of you have already heard some of those things, but I just want to reinforce them as we're talking about it, because getting out of doing those best practice ideas will hurt you in the long run when you go to do it. So everyone wanted to know about the automated offboarding. So we're going to step through this as we go. In the other session, we went through how we did the automated offboarding. I'm not going to lie, it was very rudimentary, but extremely effective. Essentially what I did, started with an EDF, locked it down. I took the screenshot before I changed the permissions. It's no longer NOC users, it is only super admin, and I will get to that in a minute. EDF is just client offboarding. It is a client level thing, because if I'm offboarding a client, they are no longer with my company, I want them to just go as a whole. I'm not going to selectively do that slowly. It's just pulling out, because basically what we do is on the day that they said this is when our service terminates, that's the day I click the checkbox. But if I happen to be on vacation that day, the other super admins can be the ones that actually click that checkbox for me.
You could write a script that automatically does that and schedule it for the day they terminate.
Yes, you can do that as well. Anything that for an EDF that can be read, it can also be written very easily through a script. So that was the next stepping point for doing that. I just haven't got to that point yet, because I haven't really had an issue so far. I thought about that the last time we offboarded, though. I was like, yeah, I should just script this out. Anyway, and then just making it at a client level. And so all it is one single checkbox. There's a tab called Client Offboarding on the client level. Go in there. There's one single radio button. Click Save, and it gets added. What then happens is I do a search for any client that has client offboarding enabled. Little side note, I actually have an offboard client built into my environment. So I just made a client. It's a non-client, but it's called offboard. Has one location called offboard. That thing has that enabled. So if I have any leftover agents after this runs, they were offline, it's sitting in a drawer or whatever, I can just move them into there, let them sit for a little while longer, see if they come off on their own. If not, then I call the customer and say, hey, these didn't make it off when we went to do that. Can you give a little bit of explanation as to why? From there, it joins a group based on that. So we have our auto join search. All of those of you who went through the Automation 101 now know exactly what this is. My group, auto join search, looks for that particular EDF based on that search right there, and then joins those into there. Make sure that you limit it to that. Well, I guess it really wouldn't matter, because if you didn't limit it to it, they're going to be offboarded anyway, so they can stay in there for eternity because they'll be deleted. Anyway, auto join search, it looks for that EDF and continues. From there, I just have a scheduled script. My offboard script runs every hour. So that way, if a machine wasn't online at that time, it runs again later. So at the top of the hour, it's going to run that script. It's going to try to offboard that machine. It's going to step through all the steps, removing everything that we had on there, and then it's going to delete it out of the system when we're done. And finally, here was the script flow. So starts by reverting Windows Update back to its original settings. I would definitely suggest that, because that way you make sure that it's taken care of. Any other software that you've rolled out, you can remove that by creating your own script for the software removal. That's usually a lot easier than actually trying to create a software install. Half the time, all you're going to do, you're going to go into your software list. You're going to right-click on that piece of software. You're going to click on Install. You're going to watch it uninstall. You're going to test and make sure that it did. Hey, it was working. All right, we're going to make that command into a script. That's my script that I bake in. Super rudimentary, super low level, but it's been working like a charm. We have it working there. Remove, well, I have Screen Connect in there, but it should say ConnectWise control. And then remove our antivirus agent as well. So it runs the script for that. It's already baked in. Remove any of the backup stuff that's there. The blanked out portion is actually the removing of our system account that we add, so that way we have access into there. So we'll pull out any access accounts that we have installed onto there. And then lastly, it uninstalls the agent. And then I've, since making this a couple weeks back, added in the SQL removal. So it will automatically just retire that one to the retired agents within there, and then that way I don't have to actually go through and just see that uninstalled flag. If anybody who's actually ran the command to uninstall the automate agent, you would know that you have that little flag when it finally thinks it finished.
Yeah, there's a stored procedure called SP delete computer, if you're not familiar with it, that does that.
One thing I will warn you about ahead of time, this particular one right here, change that value to continue on failure. This one will not complete. It has no way to verify that it actually did complete because the agent's now gone and will not verify itself as having been removed. I found that out when I ran it once and it skipped the SQL delete, and I went back and I looked at the code and I said, why did that happen? Because it failed on that point and just exited. So that final one, make sure you do that continue on failure, then you can do the SQL delete, which by the way, if you're not sure how to do that, there is an offboarding script in your environment already baked in from these guys, and it has the exact code that you need to offboard that. So, or to delete it and move it into that retired agents. So guess what I did? Done.
Yeah. Now, I do want to make a comment on that exit on failure. Does everyone know what exit on failure means? Basically, if the command, that script line command, fails to execute for any reason, it exits the script. No questions asked, no notification, nothing, it just dies. So I was talking about the best practices that we use. We never use exit on failure. We use continue on failure and move to do validation to make sure the previous command executed properly. So we've just gotten away from using exit on failure. In some circumstances maybe we do, but we want to go to the very bitter end of our scripts because we do a little bit of logging and stuff on a lot of our scripts that if it failed, we're going to log that it failed. But if we have exit on failure, the script's going to die and we'll never know any completion of that script. So we've moved away from exit on failure. You could select all lines, right-click, continue on failure now.
The one thing that I'll caveat to that, and the reason why for this particular script I have chosen to go this, because I know that's the standard practice. The problem is I'm actually removing software from here that should be removed before I remove that agent. Because if I pull that agent and the screen control, and I pull control off of there, I don't have a way to get back on there and actually get these other ones off of there for them. So I need to make sure that those actually go. So if it fails to actually remove WebRoot from that machine, I want that to exit on failure so that way I don't have to then try to figure out how can I get back on there to help you out. Because my service desk technicians, when we're offboarding a client, do not want to have to go back through that, and say, well, go to my, my Screen Connect server address, and I'm going to make a session for you, and we'll get you taken care of. No, they don't want to have to do any of that. So I have it exit on failure so I can go figure out why it failed, fix that problem, and then I can run the script again, and it will just take care of the rest of it.
Can you just resend the software list after you finish installing and check to see if it's removed?
You can do that, and I believe that actually is baked into those scripts as well. But
yeah, and if software exists, then we don't exit on failure, but we may create a ticket and naturally exit the script and not continue on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 100 ways to skin a cat, right?
Yeah, it was mostly precautionary. But another caveat, I said it in the 101, I will say it eternally if you ever borrow this thing, remove your service account last, just before you pull the agent. All of those software removals depend on that actually being available to run as admin. If you pull it beforehand, you're going to fail on those guys. And you're going to go, what happened? How do I know that? Mine used to be at the top of the list. And then I realized how stupid that was. There's a reason it's now down there in the bar right below the, okay, pull the agent now. That one can run on its own. Some of those are going to run as system because of the agent. Some of them will not. I don't want to find out which one they are. It's best practice. Dump that sucker at the end, pull your system access account at the last part, and go from there. All right, we're just going to keep kind of burning through this because I want to make sure that we keep on time for stuff.
Sorry, question on that.
Yes, sir.
So that's removing your clients. Do you approve the agent do anything for removing location or the client itself?
No, that part I leave for cleanup for myself because even though this is a good automation, I would say, there's always those straggler ones, like I said, left in a drawer, person went on leave, they're on vacation, so their machine isn't on. I'm going to need to actually touch those with the user at some point in time. There's not a lot of effort involved in getting all the agents out of there, right-clicking a location, and just I just reassociate with my offboard client as well when I go to do that. So it gives me dumping space for pretty much everything.
Yeah, now we've done something similar to that where we do location and client cleanup. The way that our Automate server is set up for implementations is every single partner has their own individual client location because every single client location has their own service account. We randomly generate a service account for every single installation. So when the implementation project is complete and we have to offboard that agent, almost identical to the way that Mike is doing this, we have 3,800 clients listed in Automate, so I have to keep that cleaned up. So what I do is I do a SQL query. Who here has ever written SQL queries in the scripting engine? It's kind of a quick and dirty way to go in and say, okay, if computer count greater than 0 for a given location, then I can't remove the location because there's still machines that exist. So there's a handful of steps that you've got to do. That would be the next version, let's say in Mike's, but there's a lot to do to be able to check to make sure all the machines are cleaned up, that there's nothing in retired assets. Yep. You know, you've got to remove everything. Passwords are deleted off the client location because you can't remove them. Are there tickets associated with that client? You have to make sure the tickets are cleaned up. So there's a lot of stuff you've got to back out or move to someplace else before you delete all of that.
Yeah, and since it's my job to ensure, yes, closing that ticket, that we had actually offboarded that client properly, there is that manual piece that I don't want that to be automated, so that way when it comes back to me like, hey, why did you do it that way? Oh, the server did that for me. No, that doesn't work when we have a customer throwing a fit because we did it wrong. So I have chosen to do it manually. That's why I say that specifically, I've chosen it, because I'm sure that you can do it, and I'm sure some of you may find value in doing that. For the way my company is structured, it's been chosen to do it this way. So there's nothing wrong with doing it a different way. If you want to spend the time to code that out, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So the next piece that I want to go over, we had the automated service plan monitoring. So this is literally just automation 101 kind of rebaked. The one downside is when Matt was talking in there, he actually went out of his way to say, do not use the Ignite one, because if you use that, or I should rephrase, use the Ignite one. Don't modify the Ignite initial values, because if you do and they ever change things, they will overwrite what you've changed. So the way I handled that was I took the ones that I wanted and the ones that I had set up and just copied all the values directly into the service plan groups that I created myself. So I have custom-made service plan groups, and then I have my own searches, I have all those things. The only thing that I did, and I would tell you do not do this because I found out the wrong way, I changed the EDF field in the Ignite additional fields to add in mine. It's worked great for 2 years. Just recently, it got overwritten. I got lucky in that when I added my values back in, everything still existed in the database. It was able to flip back on and I could select those values, no problem. They were already pre-selected. Bake those out a different way, go through the Automation 101 and kind of look at what we did in there. Create your own EDFs in a different location. You can still use the functionality that exists in Ignite. You can still use all of those things, but you just need to be really careful when you're trying to modify a system value like that. So I even used the same folder structure because initially, I was assured that the folders themselves were not the thing as long as it's within that, you have your groups, that if you add an additional group, since it's not actually the group for that, you're fine. So we have our own that have our service plans tied to it. I left all the original ones in there. I did not modify the ones that existed because modifying is the same as changing. Oop. Yeah, I guess that was pretty much all for that one. So there wasn't a lot to that. It's just the same thing as if you're going to set up your service plan for your monitors, your internal, your external, or sorry, internal and remote monitors. And then any additional services that you want to deploy, you can do that, right through those searches, through the group, using the scheduled scripts. You can run those additional things that you want to do when they join the group. You can run them, if a search case happens to be the thing, you guys can use the search filters for the scheduled scripts. So that way, if a case becomes true, you can actually have it take action on that as well. So there's so many things that you can do just with a single group for your service plans that you can make it so that way pretty much all of our services are delivered by this plan. There's about maybe 20% over here that we have to tack on in some way. But for the most part, as long as I flip that one setting for that client to our full foresight, they're getting the premium package and it's all being automatically deployed for me, so I don't have to do it when they do the onboarding. And then this was the thing that a lot of the other people were asking about. So we had a guy, and I told this story before, we had a guy that worked for us, super awesome guy. We loved working with him. He had a great personality, but he did not have passion for tech and knew it. So he ended up saying, you know what, this isn't for me, and he left our company. But his job was to prep the computers. Once we got them in, put them on the bench, get Windows updates installed, install the software that they needed, remove all the software they didn't, verify that you're good to go. The professional services team delivers those to the end user. Well, after he decided to leave, the owner said, well, where are we going to find somebody who's willing to do that level of thing? Because that's a very low-level task typically. I said, I think I can handle that just with, automation. Let's see what we can do. So I'm going to warn you, this is not at all pretty or special, but it's functional. That was what I needed. So in the old patch manager, you'd use a template to set up what your schedule was going to be. So you had your template, you set your schedules, when it could patch, when it could reboot, all those things. I went through and said every day, 24 hours a day, you can patch. And then every day, 24 hours a day, you can reboot without asking. So that was kind of the start of it. I made a template. You can do the same thing in the new patch manager, but you have to do it in the new patch manager. You go in, you create a schedule that allows it for every day with anytime reboot, and you're good to go. So same functionality. From there, I made a location at every single client in our control center called Z Computer Prep. Once again, in my brain, Z, so it winds up at the bottom, and nobody confuses it. Computer Prep across the board, so that way everyone has the exact same name. And the reason I did that, I initially, and I don't even know that I've said this in front of Matt, I initially had set it up as its own separate client. The problem is we use WebRoot. WebRoot can auto-deploy to an endpoint. It needs to have the code that's associated with that client's WebRoot plugin that you put in. You say, this is the key that you get to grab. If you're in a separate client, you can't say, well, just without actually telling it, you belong to this eventually, but you're not there yet. So I had to reimagine how can I do it so that way while it's still in the computer prep, while it's still sitting on our back bench, how can I make it so that way every client will automatically install their own WebRoot as a separate function, but will still somehow run all these other things that I did. My way to solve that was every single company gets a Z Computer Prep. What that did for me as well, now they can get an agent for that. So you can initially check in an agent to that group just by grabbing that right one, or if you're using the MSI, assigning the right value to it. You can make a check into that group at the beginning, and then I have the templates for that group applied to there. So it's going to get a different set of templates with a higher priority to do all-day patching and allow for some of the other things to go on. So you can have it check into there. It's still part of that company. It's still part of that client level, but it now exists within this group. Since they all have the exact same name on that location, I can just search location name equals Z Computer Prep. And guess what? Every single company has the exact same name, the same way, the same caps and everything. That search will find all the clients. So that somehow now exists as a location that's the same, but exists as a client. And so I can then cross over, because the other thing is I want to install software. Right now I'm just kind of giving them everything that we had. But at some point I want to be able to selectively choose what they're going to get, and we'll go over that. I think that's the last thing. But finally, all the template, there's one template for it for that location at each place. They get the all-day day template. That's actually how it was named, just because I was bored that day and decided that was funny. And once again, search for it exists as that kind of thing. Join it automatically to a group called Z Computer Prep, and then just run scripts against it each hour. I was using Ninite installers and just kind of running those against it, because if it doesn't exist, it will install it. If it does exist, it will update it. So there was no harm in actually continually running that every hour. A couple of things I did learn as a pain point that I would love to share with you all here. Make sure that you set the power policy initially. Or otherwise, this won't work at all 5 minutes after you actually walk away from that computer and that thing goes to sleep because Microsoft hates you and decides that that's a good default value, even when it's plugged in. Number 2, make sure that you set your time zone as a part of this as well. Once again, Microsoft thinks that everyone lives on the West Coast. Thank you, Microsoft. I live in Michigan. It snows here a lot, and it definitely is not 3 hours later. So make sure you throw in the time zone set. Make sure you throw in something that's going to flip that over to the correct power policy, so that way it'll stay on. And then from there, you can run whatever scripts however you want to. There is a better way to do this. There's a much better way to do this. It would involve actually selecting the EDFs and doing auditing to verify whether or not it was done, so you're not doing it all the time. That is a much larger, more developed system than I have right now. And I don't want to implement that until it was actually ready to be leaned on. So I'm still working on that. We're going to go through. Nope, we're not going to go through that. That's one of the things that I'm working on. Is each customer would have a series of EDFs in there that selects every piece of software that they want. They would select it during the preparation. It would get installed. later on, once they've already been moved out of the prep group, we would then audit on that to make sure that they have what their owner said that they have to have. And then that way we can also do compliance. Hey, you're not compliant with what your owner's policy was. You know the network use policy here, and you're not actually abiding by that. So you need to get in line, or we're going to have a conversation with the owner and say that you are choosing to remove or add things to it. So here was the other thing that I loved. Fully automated restricted access. I was not a big fan initially that in the KB, it actually tells you have to run a script in order to automate, or to flip the trigger in Ignite, so that way it'll join it to this group, so that way you can restrict your access for the customer to be able to be like screen connected, controlled. As a result, I decided, you know what, all it is really just joining it to that group and applying that template that has the restricted access on it anyway. So I piggybacked off of it. I changed the search on that group to look for my EDFs, and then I made an EDF at a location level, so that way I could turn it on a little more granularly. And so it looks for, is it at the location level? Yes? Okay, also consider, have I triggered the deny restricted access, which is the next one down. So, you know, somebody says, I want you to do all except for this one. You get that every once in a while. Or you get the owner who says, I don't care if you do anybody else, I want you to restrict it mine. That's where the selective on the computer level comes in. I can turn it off and say, don't inherit it from up here, or I can turn it on and say, ignore the one up here because I want you to do it on this one anyway. So my search, all it does is it says, look for the location level, if it's there, and not deny restricted access, or is that add to group. That's all it really was. It was just, you know, that series of check to make sure that, you know, those are the combinations that either do or don't exist. As long as all of those are vibing with what is the expectation within that search, toss her in that group, throw that template on it, you're getting restricted access. Now, because I'm doing that at a location within a client level, and if they want it for all of them, you know, unless you have 30 locations, you're probably not hurting on that. You just turn all those on, and then you make sure that you get it. This helps with your HIPAA compliance. It helps with some of your other things as well. And then because they're being added in there and getting that template applied, you're getting the same thing. There are some ways that you could even make this better. If you wanted to create a script that you would run that would turn on that value at those locations, you could do that as well. So if you are that company that happens to have 35 locations because you have a very major client, you don't really want to go through there and click and save, make a script, set that value to 1 in the script, and then just run it on all the machines in there, and it'll put it right in. All right. This is the quick list, and then we're actually going to move on. Oh man, perfect timing. Yeah. Then we're going to move on into the open forum, so there'll be questions and all that kind of stuff. Quick list of the other things that we automated. OpenDNS deployment, I'm going to be honest, I stole that straight off their website. They tell you how to do it. Wasn't going to reinvent the wheel. Still proud of it. Hey, my technicians thought I worked magic. I sure did. None of them checked to make sure that it wasn't already on the KB. Anyway, create a service account during onboarding script, and if it was a DC, promote to domain and other admins that we would expect our default account to have. So in that script, it adds our access account, assigns the password that we're expecting to it, and then the next step down, and this is a very important step, if you're going to add that to the onboarding one, which once again I don't suggest because it's not actually told to do so, make sure it comes after the role check. Because if you haven't checked for what the roles are yet, it will not know if that DC is a DC. So if you're going to do any kind of promotion to those based on whether or not it's a DC, you have to do that after the roles have been checked. You'll see that in there as well. Just a little side caveat. Additional patch reboot nag. That was that flow chart that we saw up there before. Just making sure that everyone knows, hey, can you just please go ahead and reboot this machine for once in your life? Carbonite backup deployment. Got really sick and tired of having to go on and manually go to the website on the machine, logging in with my admin credentials to download the agent. So I said, no, I'm not doing that anymore. Now they have an MSI installer for that. Punch the code into the field that I created as an EDF, run a script that I created that downloads that MSI file and runs it, because the MSI is the same for everybody. The only thing that's different is that key switch. AVG removal tool with 32 and 64-bit OS consideration built in. That was actually not my idea. There's 2 guys here that work for a different company that are freaking awesome, and I talk to them every year because I keep getting more from them each time that they talk. I give back, don't worry, but at the same time, that was first year I was here, I was struggling with that a whole bunch, and they said, hey, why don't you do it this way? And I said, let me try that. Worked like a charm. And then lots of other odds and ends, minor things as needed. People say, oh, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that. One of the other things that I recently told my technicians, they complain that when like the networking fails on a workstation, because that happens every once in a while, WinSock reset. The problem is, have you ever tried to walk an end user, no technical experience, through a command line interface to tell them how to run this command that will reset their networking stack? And I would hear them constantly say, okay, we're going to do this. Nope, it's this. No, I need you to type this. Can you read that back to me so I know that you typed net sh? Nope, it's like netsh. Nope, it's, and so you hear that and I'm going, you know what? Why are we not just, if you're doing that a lot, let me pre-dump in a folder some batch files. And you can just say reset network stack.bat, run that from the temp folder. Okay, you're back online, cool, have a great day. You can just precede those on every system that you want to. It doesn't hurt to put a .bat file on there as long as you know which ones you're doing, because obviously that could be a problem. But if that could set yourself up for success in advance before a failure actually happens, so that way your technicians don't have to try to communicate tough concepts when they don't have Google or anything else. Well, just Google the commands, it'll be easy. Here's a link to it. Oh, that's right, you're not on the internet. Oh, that sucks. Exactly. Gosh, that's the other go-to, like, oh, I'll just put in the ticket that you're not gonna get. Do you have email on your phone? All right, so like I said, I'm not the best at what I'm doing up here. These are just things that we've done. These are things that I realized we had a problem in. These are the ways that I solve them. There may be more efficient, there may be better, and there may be more custom tailored ways to solve them in your environment. I had to kind of code for what I was dealing with, and I had to code for who I had underneath me that I knew could or couldn't use it if I actually went the full distance. So every once in a while you have to consider that. What I want to do is I want to open this up to the floor and see, are there questions about what I've done? Are there questions about where you guys need to start from? And like I said, please, by all means, I want this to be contributive. I want this to be something where you feel like you can speak up and give your ideas as well. That's why I have Matt in here, and I've asked some of the guys from the Lab Tech Geek Squad to show up and also be just resources within the room. But we'll get to that. But I do have 2 rules. Please do not mock questions asked. We are going to be all levels of knowledge here. This was meant to be a 101 even though it was accidentally written as a 201. So this is like, I don't know where to start, please help me start. So please take that into consideration when you're answering. Don't be rude, don't be mean. Everyone's looking for an answer here. Heck, I probably could throw a few out there myself that I'm looking for. Participate. If you have an idea or you have a way to make something better, or heaven forbid, I say something and it's like, Mike, that is the most inefficient way they could have done that. If you would just do this, that's better. Please feel free to correct me. I don't want to give somebody bad information. The thing I'm going to give is the thing of how I've done it or would do it, but even that might not be good. So if you have a better way to do it, tell me, and then that way I can fix how I'm doing it, and maybe I get a better approach out of it. So,
the way that you say that reminds me of the fact that I've probably made every mistake you could possibly make. I've rewritten more, like I'll go a year down the road and look at a script I wrote a year or so ago and be like, what the heck was I thinking? My gosh, I'm my own worst critic. But as time goes on, you learn more tips and tricks and way to do stuff. You're going to go back and review something you did a year ago and find yet a more efficient way. Just you talking earlier, you made me think of things that I know that I could go back to office and look at and probably critique myself a little bit, but have a better way of doing it. Pertaining to permissions, like I need to really review my permissions the way that I have that laid out, because as Automate comes out with newer version, you have new features, you have new capabilities. So it only gets better and better and better. Right now, we're going through a whole ordeal of trying to make our scripts go faster. How do you do that? So we're trying to shave minutes, seconds off of different automated scripts. And just coming here gives us those different ideas of, like, if someone has an idea like, listen, it takes an hour to do this. Is there a faster way to do something? That's a legitimate way to be able to solve. Let us know what kind of thing you're trying to solve if you want to shave time off of. That'd be a perfect starting point.
Yeah, and I do want to keep it going, but at the same time, if we get too deep into something, I might have to say, hey, let's open for another question. I'm more than willing to meet with somebody afterward or at dinner or at lunch tomorrow or whatever. Just peg me. Like I said, I'm not the best. I have ideas. Whether or not they're good or not, that's up for you to decide. All right, anybody? All right, what we got?
I got two things.
Sure.
With the new PC prep, after it's completed, do you have it automatically moved to the correct location?
No, currently, because there is no auditing to confirm that it actually has completed, it's a manual move right now. But the idea behind that is when I get to the point where I've baked out my auditing piece of it, I want it so that way it sends an email to my professional services team saying X computer that you installed is ready to deploy to the client, and then it opens that ticket for them so they just know to go on site. They schedule themselves for it, it goes on site, and nobody even had to do anything other than just putting that agent on there. And at that point, it would actually do the SQL move for it as well. But as of right now, no, that's not a piece of it. That's in version 2, be determined.
So to follow on that makes me think of the acronym MVP, minimum viable product. Whenever I'm developing a script, I get the basics. I had this grand idea, but my version 1 is not that grand idea. I get the basics. I get the bare functionality of what I'm trying to achieve, and then start squeezing in the nuts and bolts. Start putting the bells and whistles on it to really polish it up. So next thing I know, I'm in version 6, and I'm 3 days in. So it's minimum viable product.
And you had a number 2 there.
Yeah, so, well, I have another suggestion.
Okay, absolutely, I'd love to hear it.
So the other,
No, I'm all about this. It's like, hey, yeah, this, honestly, I created this class or requested this class because I wanted the answers back to me just as much as I wanted you to get them as well. So I was hoping that as we have a crossfire, I can like, that one's mine, taking that too.
so the other thing was, I brought up the idea about limiting the permissions on the scripts with the testing folders.
Yeah.
So our NOC admin actually figured out in SQL, and then my SQL actually have an automated task run to actually set those permissions on on every script inside each of those folders.
Okay.
So if anybody is interested, just ping me and I can point you in his direction to get the code.
Nice.
To do that, so that way, as we have 5 people scripting, and if one of them doesn't set the permissions right, I don't want someone running the script that we shouldn't.
Yeah, we have a monitor that looks if someone doesn't put permissions or set permissions on it, we create a ticket on our board, just so we can heckle them.
And I will admit,
I don't know how to fix them. We're like, hey man, this is the 3rd script this week you didn't put permissions on.
I will admit I am not the best at SQL. If you want to see somebody like that, that'd be like Michael Priest from Australia. Dude is sick with SQL. So if you need some guidance or even some consulting, I know that's what he does. Yes, sir.
I struggle with whether or not to use Ignite. I turn it on and I use a lot of the stuff in there, but I ended up writing it myself versus, it just seems like everything turns on. I'm just curious if you sound more mature in the product, a lot of people are not using Ignite. We're beyond that, or?
Well, if you want a bunch of tickets, turn Ignite on.
Yeah,
It is right there, right?
Matt kind of touches on that in the Automation 101. Ignite was developed so that way somebody starting out with the product that's never touched it before would be able to, out of the box, have some functionality that they could just turn on, make it work, and you could work with it from there. As you get more in-depth into the product, I haven't moved away from Ignite, but I'm doing more custom things outside of it than I was when we initially started. So I wouldn't say it's not helpful, and I wouldn't say that it's bad. It's actually extremely good for what it does. But at the same time, I've gotten a bit more creative for my environment, and that's really where it comes in, is the customization tailored to your environment. Because as good as they are, and they're awesome at what they do, they cannot predict how you're going to try to use that tool for your end users. Because I've talked to people at lunch today. Some of them were MSPs like myself. Another one was actually a software support vendor who, that's all they did was software support. I mean, there's so many people using LabTech in different ways, and I'm going, I didn't even think you could use it for that, but okay. Yeah, let's talk about that. Like, what exactly are you doing when you just have one software product and you're using LabTech to support that? Like, let's talk. So, yeah, I would say it's kind of a combination. I use what I need from it, and I've built what I want.
My concern is I have moved beyond Ignite, but I feel like I might be missing out on new things that they're adding in as time goes on. So, is there any sort of list of things that they're adding in?
There is. If you go to the university, there's release notes. So I believe every Tuesday, we release new. Has everyone been to the Solution Center before? AKA what used to be called the Marketplace back in the day? That is where you would go and get the update for Ignite or any other solution, whether it be plugins, baked in solutions, and you'll be able to read release notes to see what's changed.
Yep. So my friend in the back that's probably losing blood flow at this point for having his arm up.
I was curious, so any partners here who have dedicated scripting people? I know you sound like you use quite a bit of just not like admin stuff. For some of the smaller partners, we have 6 tenths. And so we don't necessarily have a person to dedicate to always. It ends up being me.
Yep.
So
Feel your pain.
I'm just kind of curious about what, those we have in a dedicated people, how big are you guys? How are you guys?
All right, that sounds like a floor question because I'm sitting in his chair.
Well, we have about 12 employees, and apparently I got nominated to be the new lab tech automate ConnectWise person full time.
Ah, voluntold.
Nice.
But the owner is like, well, you know, eventually you're going to pay us hours of work, so we're going to make this full-time position. You're not going to do tickets anymore. Go and make this yours.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've followed there are a lot of people where it's like nobody has the time to do this. Yeah, it sounds all great, but it's like how do you find the time? And I know like you should have a lot of shortcuts and kind of ways to go, but it's always well, where do you make time?
Two pro
Okay.
tips that I feel I need to give everybody in this room, but especially you right now. Number one, every awesome dev that works here at the company is upstairs standing around a table half the time waiting for their shoulder to get tapped. They're proud of what they've built. They love the product that they've designed, and they want to show it off, and they want to help you understand it. You're here, you paid a ton of money to be here, and you might as well get your money's worth by going and talking to them and making sure, hey, this thing is supposed to do this. I feel like it's not doing that. Am I using it wrong, or do I need to fix it? Do you need to fix it? What is it? And so most of the time, I found out that I just configured it wrong, and they were like, "Oh yeah, just do this, 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 and this, and it's fixed." And we're sitting right there at the table, and now we're good to go. Number two thing that I will tell you is don't ever sit at the same table with two people in a row at lunch. Find another table every time. Sit down with somebody that you don't know, get to know them, and ask them what their struggles are, what they've fixed, what their favorite thing is. Matt found that out today. I was asking the guy across, like, hey, what's your favorite part of this? What are you struggling with? Because I want to know, are you struggling with the same thing as I am? Did you already fix this thing I'm dealing with? Because if we get talking about that, I might have already solved the problem you have, and you might have already solved the problem I have. So that helped me out huge the first year I was here. Those two guys that taught me the AVG thing, that was a lunch thing. Sat down with them at lunch. It was kind of an accidental meeting. I was complaining about how we were on and using AVG at the time, and so trying to figure out how to remove that since Kaseya couldn't figure out how to do it. Yeah, their support did not know. And so trying to figure out how to get that off of there, and they gave me the keys of the kingdom. It's like, this was the best lunch ever.
So before I see a couple hands up, you had asked how do you get the time. This is something, Mike, you mentioned early on about being able to find the time to do this. For those that this isn't your dedicated position at your organization. Yeah. I know for me, when I first started it was Lab Tech at the time. I think I was employee number 36, and now there's almost 1,000 of us. My job was to install Lab Tech. I was a consultant. So where did I find the time to build out all this automation? Personal, and I'm not saying I recommend this, but personal reasons, I go home and get a 6-pack of beer and I'll sit at my house and do it because it's my passion. It's what I love to do. I got so interested in this. My wife wouldn't listen to me, but I did. I geeked out on my own. Every single minute I had, I would do it. Now, did I get permission? Once again, I don't recommend it. I didn't get permission. I'd rather ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. It was a small company, right? We could get away with that stuff. I work for a bigger organization where there's a little bit more red tape than what I'm accustomed to, but now it's my job. Apparently, whatever I did in my free time, I convinced someone that, listen, this is worth the savings. And a lot of engineers, like on the support desk, are scared that we're going to automate them out of a job. Has anybody ever heard that before? You may. As you start creating solutions and be like, Jason, look at this, you're going to see that people are going to start feeling a little intimidated because you're going to automate them out of a job. No, you're freeing them up to do something else. Yeah. That's the whole goal.
I was at Memphis 12 people, and when we first implemented that, we started with 2 days a week part-time allocation, dedicating a person, and we picked up one person who had the aptitude, the interest, the skills. But we couldn't dedicate a week or a whole day even sometimes. But we knew that if we didn't allocate at least 4 hours twice a week, it would be wasted time.
Beg, still borrow.
Somebody who's interested, who has a passion, that will push it beyond the 4 hours a week. Because it is hard. You have to wear multiple hours.
Absolutely.
You need to dedicate it to probably a single individual based on your size. And maybe, 3 to 4 hours twice a week to be able to really get the ramp up. And that's what works for us. Now, I'm at another MVP where we're 4,000 employees. We have 2.5 people writing scripts. So scale.
It'd be terrible to be that
just
half
as
person.
just as a forewarning, we're just under 15 minutes remaining, so I think we got about time for 2 more. And I saw a hand on the wall, and I saw the hand up here. So I'm going to take the 2 of those in order. We'll go there and then here, and then if we still have time for more, I have to just wind it down to make sure that we have enough at the end for everything. So sorry about that.
We don't have a knock right now, so basically about 6 in the morning, a guy comes in and looks at offline servers, looks at failed monitors, looks at backup jobs, and he basically types up an email and sends it out. I'd like to automate that. I don't know if anybody's done that before, but we don't have to talk about it right now, but we can talk about it after the class. But I'd be curious to know if anybody's done that.
Talk to me after, because there are some parts of that, especially if it's the offline server thing. You can do that through a service plan. We can get that hooked up for you. Are you a managed partner as well? Then we can have it open a ticket for you instead of having it email you, because I know how annoying that is trying to keep up with all your emails.
Just a one-time daily email is what we're looking for.
Okay.
Summarize what's going on until we get a knock.
Well, the other question is, how would you put your time against that ticket so that way your owner has justification for your utilization? So I would really consider using your managed solution since it does exist and you're paying for it already.
Well, we're not on managed yet.
Oh, okay.
This is a temporary, we need to get this done type thing for the short term.
Okay, sorry.
If anybody's done it, I can
Yep, I am sure that there's any number of us in the room that could give some pointers on that, just knowing your situation. Catch us afterward, we'll kind of point you in a good direction on that one. Yes, sir.
You talked a bit about onboarding. My MSP struggles a lot with getting agents to deploy, even using probes. So I was wondering if you had advice either now or after that you could give us with getting agents deployed remotely.
Admittedly, I don't, but I know that that is a thing in the room, and actually, I want the answer too. So I know in our HTG group, we had discussions about that, just what's a good way to do it. Does anybody have an active suggestion for that?
Well, I was going to ask with your deployment rules, are you joining the domain at some point in time, or are you taking them out to the client site to deploy them?
What's that now?
Are you joining the machines to a domain, or are they working in workplace?
Yeah, so we do that when we get them on site. We don't do it in advance. We just have the technicians actually do that as a part of when they get there.
And you run your script, and you haven't joined the domain at the site?
Yes, not through a script. It's manually done by the technicians as of right now. There are some pre-things that you can do. The newer versions of the server actually do allow for remote AD add, but yeah.
The reason I was asking is because the way we deploy a lot of our group policy.
That was going to be my response. Group policies,
Group policy
to me,
is
the most successful method.
Yeah.
Successful method.
Chicken and egg thing, though, because if you want the agent to join the domain for you, then you can't deploy the agent policy. But if you want to
Well, the idea behind it is if we're prepping it on site, we'll put the agent on while it's there so we can use the GPO once it gets there, and we just have to manually join it. But if you're onboarding a new client, and that's kind of more what we're talking about here, technically the domain would hopefully exist unless you're building it for them as a part of the onboarding process. We've done that before. Many of you may have actually done that. They didn't have a server, they want an infrastructure, come in and we support it from there. But for the most part, I think GPO is actually the recommended by LabTech best way to do it. The probe is not terribly successful due to firewall rules and things like that. There was a suggestion in our HTG group to use a combination of both, the GPO, and when that fails, use the probe, but use a GPO to set the firewall rules to allow for that to run through. The person who said that that's been their most successful solution to doing it. So I have not yet tried that myself. We use the GPO deployment and then just manually hit a couple here and there if they get missed, but for the most part, the GPO or otherwise. Our style of onboarding is we just dedicate a person to go on site, get everything onboarded in a day, do the assessment the next day, and we have them onboarded in a week. So that's our style to doing it. So they would prefer just to do it manually to be sure that it got touched and that they didn't miss anything. Because that's the other problem, computers offline, person's out of the office, whatever. That can be difficult to ensure that, we can sign off on that project, they are installed, onboarded, and we are good for the next phase of whatever purchase they made. So
PDQ deploy works really well to push it out immediately if you're not.
Yeah, for new client onboardings, that's it.
To do remotely. That's an idea.
What? Say it again.
There's a program called PDQ deploy. It's a push it out MSIs or EXCs.
So like a GUI, it's like a GUI version of MSI exec.
Yeah,
just
basically.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it works really well. Like typically we'll remote in
and I can install that, fire it up, and deploy out, 50 agents in a matter of minutes.
Good.
I use PS exec sometimes. Again, pull out a list out of either DHCP, export the list, run it back to directory, and then kind of tweak it into a batch file and do the file copy for the agent, and then run the PS exec.
Yeah. Now, something about the probe. Probe used to be the most popular, but it's no longer the most successful because the probe uses PS exec. The problem with PS exec is now you're getting these new Windows 10 machines, and you've got UAC, and you've got these firewall rules. PS exec is becoming a lot less successful unless you're on a domain that has the permission set at group policy level to be able to allow those types of commands.
Yeah.
I saw someone back there, gentleman back there.
I was just going to say on the joining domain, we do ours at our office. Typically our clients, we have a lockdown VPN connection. We do them so we can actually join the domain from our office. But that connection is one way so they can access.
That has been a discussion point within our office. It hasn't been anything that we've felt the pain currently for the average number of systems we deploy a month. We've said this would be a good expansion point to consider. We haven't decided to pull a trigger yet. So
The hardest part is when there's applications that require them to be on the domain already that's installed.
yeah.
So I've got to ask a quick question. Before I came over to LabTech, I'd been with an MSP for about 11 years. And work groups were a little more common back in the day. Are they still common? Like, we're talking about domains. Do we still have like little 5-pack of computers?
Yeah.
Do you go get a little box and be like, you're getting a domain?
Now the 5-6 computer companies a lot of times.
Still have work groups. They still exist. Oh, damn.
Really?
Wow. What's up?
No control rights.
So they wanted a domain controller in the cloud, and they wanted a terminal server in the cloud, but they wanted all their localized workstations.
They want their cake and eat it too. Yeah, it is. But the great thing is let's say if you don't have Active Directory, you could use Automate to be able to administrate your global user account across all these machines. You could script it out to change this user account every week if you wanted to. You can lock people out of machines. You can do, it's not a DC or AD replacement, but technically you could manage those small 5-10 packs, I guess.
So we gotta wind down.
Do we? We got about,
we're
what,
getting
5
close
minutes?
enough to yeah, we got 5 minutes left. So here's the thing. Like I said when we started out, I really wasn't sure exactly what we were going to do with this session because the theory behind the end of it is it just kind of goes where it goes from there. So please, one of the things that they want us to talk about, the app. Go in the app, give us a rating. Tell us ways that we can improve this. If you feel like there was a better structure or there was a better, maybe we just need a topic to talk about for deployments or something along that nature, let me know those feedback items because then I can take that and I can polish this up as we go. This was a first run at it. This was kind of our, let's see if this is something that you guys get value out of. Let's see if this is something that you're feeling and you're hurting on and maybe this helps you get to that next step. So I want to know if we accomplish that. If we didn't, I want to fix it. I want to make it something that is valuable to you or scrap it altogether if it isn't. So please go on the app, fill it out, let us know what's going on, what you liked, what you didn't like, and what we can do from there. And I'd be really happy to talk to anybody outside of here that wants to discuss anything further. Once again, 4:45, the LabTech Geek session. Make sure you make it out for that one because if you thought this one was any kind of good, that one's going to blow your socks off. So thank you all for coming out. I appreciate you guys being here, and we'll see you guys around.